Unemployment is roughly at 4.4% based on recent reports, and when you hear that number, it doesn't really sound that bad. Markets are still open, people are still commuting, so what's the issue? That number is just the surface. Underneath it, we have a labor market that shed 92,000 jobs last month when economists expected gains. We have hundreds of thousands of federal workers losing their jobs and the largest government layoff in American history. We also have a generation of young workers who can't even break in the job market no matter how many applications or resumes they send in. And we have an economy that runs on consumer spending that only happens when people have paychecks. Let's start with what you've actually seen on the news and reports, the 4.4% figure. As of February 2026, the official US unemployment rate is 4.4%, which represents about 7.57 million Americans. That rose from 4.3% in January, and it's approaching the 4-year high of 4.5% hit back in November 2025. Now, 4.4% by itself doesn't sound that alarming, but here's what the number doesn't tell you. This number is called the U3 rate, and the official figure only counts people who don't have a job and are actively applying for work. The moment someone gets so discouraged they stop applying, they fall off the count. The government actually has a name for them, discouraged workers. And discouraged workers are invisible to the headline statistic. And if any of you have tried to apply for a job in the past couple years and got met with constant rejections or being ghosted, the number of discouraged workers has to be increasing over time. Just based on personal experience, I have seen people recently laid off from good jobs to now competing against teenagers to get a minimum wage fast food job, just to keep them afloat. So what happens when you actually count them? That gives you the U6 rate, which is the broadest measure of labor underutilization. It counts the officially unemployed, discouraged workers who've given up, and people stuck in part-time jobs who would like to work full-time. As of February 2026, the U6 rate sits at 7.9%, nearly double the headline reported. And here's the detail that should concern you. The gap between U3 and U6 has been widening. That spread used to be around 3 percentage points. Now it's above 4. More workers are slipping through the cracks and not being included in the official measurement every single month. So when you hear 4.4%, what you're really hearing is 4.4% of people who haven't given up are without work. The honest number is closer to 8%. But to be even more realistic, that number is probably even higher, since just because someone is employed doesn't mean it's on a livable wage. Considering gig work like Uber or DoorDash is very popular due to the difficulty of getting a job right now, you can work full-time and be technically self-employed, but it's not necessarily the best job or sustainable for most people. But besides that, on March 6, 2026, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released the February jobs report. Economists had forecasted the economy would add somewhere between 50,000 and 60,000 jobs. What actually happened was the complete opposite. Employers shed 92,000 jobs in February, not added, but lost. Which, if you've been paying attention to the previous jobs reports, they have all been positive and then revised later down the line. This is the first time that it was negative, and most likely it'll be revised down even more. Revisions to December and January, for example, erased an additional 69,000 jobs that were previously reported, meaning the last 2 months were much worse than what was initially told. Federal government payrolls dropped another 10,000 in the official survey. Healthcare alone lost 28,000 jobs, which was a shock considering it was the only growing field. When tech companies were laying off workers, healthcare was hiring. When retail was shrinking, healthcare was expanding. The reason for this is primarily due to Medicaid cuts, which cut revenue streams for the healthcare industry, leading to staff being cut. CNN Business reported that on the same day the jobs numbers came out, retail sales data showed a 0.2% decline in January, the biggest monthly drop since May 2025. Jobs are falling and spending is falling at the same time. Many people are now describing the job market as no hire, no fire. Companies are too uncertain about tariffs, interest rates, and the broader outlook of things to bring on new staff, but also reluctant to do large layoffs, except apparently for the biggest tech companies. The result is a frozen labor market where opportunities for new entrants and career changes have become exhausted. To understand what was a huge contributor to this, we have to go back to the beginning of 2025. The Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, launched what is considered to be the largest mass government layoff in American history. By estimates compiled from the Federal News Network and other sources, approximately 300,000 federal employees had been laid off or separated from service by early 2026. But it's argued that the ripple effect goes much further than that direct number. When you include the federal contractors, universities, hospitals receiving government funding, and nonprofits relying on federal allocations, the total affected workforce could reach close to 1 million jobs. Washington, D.C. became the clearest case study of what this really looked like. According to a report that tracks D.C. labor data, unemployment claims in the district surged 167% between February and May 2025. The Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy confirmed that the D.C. region had already entered what they described as a minor recession by mid-2025. And the damage spread well beyond D.C. at that point. When government workers lost their jobs, they stopped spending at restaurants, daycare centers, and local retailers. Now, the overall 4.4% number already understates the problem, but averages hide even more of the truth. For young workers, unemployment among this group ages 20 to 24 rose faster in 2025 than for the general working population, according to TD Economics. Young workers are the last hired and the first to be fired during slowdowns, and the no hire, no fire environment means they simply can't get their foot in the door. For low-income workers, wage growth barely kept pace with inflation in 2025. It was found that low-income households now spend roughly 59% of their budgets on essentials, including food, fuel, utilities, and housing, which is up from pre-pandemic levels. That leaves almost nothing for discretionary spending, savings, or emergencies. By contrast, high-income households spend about 42% on essentials, leaving them far more financial breathing room. This is what economists call a K-shaped labor market. For the top earners, things look just fine. They are spending, markets have recovered from recent volatility, and tax refunds in 2026 are running about 20% higher than last year, which gives wealthy households an extra cushion. At the bottom, the pressure is growing as spending grows more limited as inflation ramps up and wages stay stagnant, along with it being even harder to find a higher paying job. Here's the part that still matters though, even if you have a job and feel fine right now. Consumer spending drives roughly 70% of the entire US economy. When workers lose jobs, they cut spending, and when spending falls, everything starts to crumble. To give a rough idea of what could actually happen, first, a worker loses their job. Their income drops immediately. That person stops going to restaurants, cuts back on shopping, and cancels subscriptions. You multiply this by millions of people, and retail and service businesses see revenue decline. Businesses facing lower revenue then stop hiring. Some lay off staff. Unemployment then begins to rise even further. Tax revenues then fall due to fewer payroll taxes and less sales tax from consumer spending. The local governments facing reduced revenues then cut public services, road maintenance, school programs, housing assistance, just as the need for those services is rising. This perpetual cycle would just continue further and get worse. It just requires enough people losing enough income at the same time. The consensus for what is to come in the future is not necessarily a catastrophic crash. It's something that in some ways is harder to deal with. That is growth slow enough to keep millions unemployed or underemployed, but not dramatic enough to trigger the kind of policy response that a full recession would force. The main culprit for future unemployment getting worse is, you guessed it, AI. AI is producing all sorts of benefits that individuals and businesses can use, but is it going to replace the workforce? I mean, many major tech companies are already doing some of the biggest layoffs ever due to the pursuit of integrating AI. If AI really eliminates more jobs than the new jobs that are created, unemployment is going to skyrocket even higher. So, to bring this all together, the headline for unemployment says 4.4%, but the real numbers depend on who you are and where you look. The broader U6 rate is nearly almost double the reported amount, and we have continuous job losses with more revisions down the line. If you're watching this, you probably know someone that's struggling to find a job or even just struggling to make ends meet. Consumer spending is already showing real strain, and the one sector, healthcare, that had been keeping the labor market somewhat afloat just lost jobs in the last month. Now, none of this means that we're going to crash and burn soon, but it only takes one domino to be toppled over to start a chain reaction before it becomes uncontrollable. The more the true unemployment numbers climb, the more we are at risk of a huge systemic and economic issue. I guess we'll have to see how the upcoming unemployment and jobs numbers turn out to see how this all plays out, even though they literally always get changed and revised. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. I'll see you guys next time.